Welcome to The Practical Intuitive, where each Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern, where host Robin Fritz explores mind, body, and spirit for the real world. Because we are all intuitives and healers, and we must all learn to love ourselves and live that love every day. Robin is a trained and certified intuitive and spiritual consultant and hypnotherapist with an international practice based in Seattle, Washington. As the practical intuitive, she covers personal and business intuition, animal communication, mediumship, space clearing, past life regression, shamanic insights, energy healing, soul choice. It's all here. Readings, healings, and funny, warm, thought-provoking conversations. It's Robin Fritz, the Practical Intuitive, helping you mastermind body and spirit for the real world. No ifs, ands, buts, or BS ever.
Welcome to the Practical Intuitive Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World. It's Robin Fritz, and we are live on a sunny, cold day in Seattle, Washington. So thank you for joining me today. My work and my show are about tapping our natural intuitive and healing abilities. We are all naturally intuitives and healers, and we just need to learn what those abilities are and how to apply them in our daily lives, whether we're at home or at work. And so in my work as a consultant or, listening, trying to give people information, it's all about how we empower ourselves, how we claim our power to be our best selves at home and at work. And, we all know it's a chore every single day. It's hard to get out there and do what we came here to do, even what we have to do on a daily basis to keep body, mind, and spirit together. But today I want to talk about nature, and I have a very special guest joining me today to talk about her book, and she'll be joining us in a few minutes, Adrienne Ross Scanlan, and her book, Turning Homeward, Restoring Hope and Nature in the Urban Wild. So if you have questions or comments, you are more than welcome. I'd be delighted, in fact, for you to call in and join us at 202-570-7057. This week we won't be doing live intuitive readings, but most weeks you're welcome to call in or email me at robin@robinfritz.com. That's ROBYNFRITZ.com. If you're too shy to come on the show, which I totally get, email me a question, and I've covered a number of those in previous shows, and I'm happy to do it coming up. But as we get started today, I want to do what I do each week, which is to help you tap into the energy of my crystal partner, Fallon, the citrine Lemurian quartz. Now, we are very different here at my office. And Fallon is a rare power crystal, a healer and a truth bringer. And as a group joining us here today on this show, it's our opportunity to tune in to this rare energy and to experience it. And you will do that in the way your intuition works most strongly. So you will see pictures, hear him chat, feel his energy, or simply know that he's connected to you in this hour. And at the end of the hour, we'll get you regrounded back into your body to go about the rest of the day. But this is your time to be with this supportive community. So if you imagine Fallon seeing this clear quartz with this faint yellowish cast to it, imagine taking your attention to the top of your head, and mind, body, and spirit are just coalescing. And as you breathe down your body from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, just feel the cares of the day washing away, and you're getting regrounded and rebalanced in this time with us. So down from the top of your head, down your face, your shoulders, your chest, your hips, your knees, and your feet. The top of your head to the bottom of your feet. Just feel that whooshing through you. Fallon works very fast, which makes him a great partner because I like things to go fast and easy. And now imagine as he's rotating outside your body, moving up your body. Feel that your body flood with healthy, positive energy, moving up from your feet, past your knees, your hips, your chest, your shoulders, your face, and the top of your head, your crown chakra. So just relax into that feeling. This is a good way for you to work on your intuition each week as you connect with this crystal and you tune in to me and to my guests for that week. And, this week, my guest is, I guess you could say a nature writer. We'll let her clarify that for you. But I've known her for some years. And what is very interesting to me is this concept of urban wild. A lot of us really don't think of nature as nature as a thing or as a place to be. And I grew up in small town Oregon, and I grew up basically in an old growth forest. And those days we didn't call it that. It was just where I went on the weekends. We were fished. My dad loved to fish, so every weekend in the summer we'd go fishing, and then at lunch I would walk out into the woods and be by myself for a period of time. It was the best I ever felt growing up because I wasn't very big on people. Pretty shy and pretty withdrawn, and did not understand that other people weren't talking to trees and weather systems and so on that I was. So no wonder I was more comfortable in an old growth forest. But as an adult, I find it very interesting in talking with people, especially my friends on the East Coast. And I remember, if you're sitting there at home or wherever you're sitting listening to this, whatever country you're in, we're out there, we're exploring the world, but how are we actually doing that? I have my best friend in the entire world for many, many years lived on the East Coast. She grew up in New York, and she was visiting one time, and she said to me, if the rest of the world were as beautiful as this, if we could see how beautiful the world is, we might be more interested in taking care of it. I was astonished. I'm like, what? But, you grow up in New York City, and I've been there several times, and they do have nature in the city, but, you're thinking concrete and tall buildings. And as another example, I remember talking to someone's deceased dad, and he had lived in New York, and he wanted to experience in his next soul choice the life as a wild animal. The problem was he couldn't imagine what a wild animal would do. I don't know, I guess he never watched a nature show or anything, so he came back as a street cat in New York City. So imagine trying to have to tell this person who's a minister that her dad came back as a cat, a wild stray cat in New York City, because that was as close to nature as he could think of getting. And he's standing there with my dad, who, if I've talked about the deceased and I work with my dad as a medium, he is looking at my dad and kind of laughing, like, what the heck was I thinking of? And my dad is like, what's wrong with being a cat? And we're talking about exploring nature, and we're going to get really well grounded in that when Adrienne joins us. But oh my gosh, I've spent 20 years in Seattle. We have a population of 600,000 people. So you'd say I'm a city girl, but in fact, I live in the wild. I live in West Seattle, where I look out my window and I see possums and raccoons and foxes and, well, not foxes too much down here, but coyotes, yes. Walking down the beach, there are otters, there are all kinds of birds, bald eagles on a regular basis, occasional whales. And it's wild. And 20 years of walking dogs 5 times a day. You see nature in all its glory. But what does that mean to us? What is nature? What is wild and what is urban? And how do we define our role as people in the natural world? And that's a question I'm going to bring up and let Adrienne talk with us today. Adrienne, are you here yet?
I am right here, Robin.
There she is. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. So everyone, this is Adrienne Ross Scanlan and her book, gorgeous book, and I'm so thrilled to see this book, Turning Homeward, Restoring Hope in Nature in the Urban Wild. So, yeah, I had to throw a lot of stuff there in the beginning of the show, Adrienne, but a lot of people just don't really think of nature as nature. So that's why you're here today. Tell us about you and tell us about your book.
Well, you played a very big and early role in giving me the emotional support and pat on the back to keep working and putting together Turning Homeward, which
That's
is
right.
a personal story, and it's a story of my life. It's a story also of nature here in a very urban area, in the very urban Seattle Puget Sound area. But mainly, it's my story as a newcomer to the Pacific Northwest who discovers a sense of home by restoring the nature that's close to our lives. I came out to Seattle from upstate New York. I very much was in this kind of nature is out there paradigm. You go on a bus, you go on a train, you go far away, and then you go see it. And it's not really something that's close by. I came out to Seattle, and I began doing what I call heart-to-hand restoration volunteering. I became a citizen scientist, which is a very fancy way of saying that. I collected field data for regular scientists. I was counting salmon that were coming up city creeks and streams. I was yanking out invasive weeds like Himalayan blackberry. I was planting native plants like cascara. Once I had a bumblebee colony that decided to take up residence in my bedroom, and just and I was having to live with them until I finally found the beekeeper to help me get them out of my house.
I would be doing that real quick.
Right, and but I was very much a newcomer, and in some ways I feel I still am a newcomer. All this getting my hands dirty, whether it was planting native trees and shrubs at Ham Creek, which is a creek off the Duwamish, whether it was monitoring salmon at Honey Creek, which was out in the suburban areas. All of this, it was helping me learn the geography of my new home, where I was. But more importantly, as I got my hands dirtier and I got my hands more and more literally into the place where I lived, it helped me make peace with my father's many illnesses and with his death. It helped me take the next steps in my personal life that eventually led to my marriage and becoming a parent myself. So I wrote Turning Homeward out of that realization that the nature that we cherish, it literally is as close as our front door. And when we restore it, it helps to heal home and heart.
And, and that's a really awesome point, is you went through an awful lot. I mean, you switched coasts, and you came here as a complete stranger, which, didn't used to happen.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
It was before the tech boom. I moved to Seattle. I was a complete newcomer. I did not know anyone. I did not have a job waiting for me here. I had never even seen before. My father had died a year or so earlier. He was a survivor, and then finally he succumbed to Parkinson's disease and a lot of the complications that stemmed from that. I was living in upstate New York at the time of his death. I was emotionally exhausted from it. I was also in an extremely stressful job at a statewide domestic violence program.
Right.
I knew I needed to think about my life in a new way. I knew that I could not do that in an old place. So I did something that made perfect sense to me at the time. Looking back on it, it still makes perfect sense to me that I did this, but a lot of people's jaws will drop when I tell them this. I quit my job. I put just about everything I owned in storage. I found a sitter for my cat. I loaded up my Toyota Tercel. I took a solo 1-month road trip across the United States. I eventually ended up in Seattle. That's where I decided to stay and make my home here. And that's where the whole story got interesting.
Right, and that's where you've been. So what made you decide to stay in Seattle?
It was a number of different factors, but I think it was simply that I needed a new place, and this was a time in my life that I needed a new place. I could just as easily have gone to Portland or to San Francisco, but I decided I was just going to put my roots down in Seattle. One of the things that kind of helped cement my place here, it was one of those weird, everyday, life-changing epiphanies that we all get. in the late 1980s, early 90s, when I was still bumbling my way around Seattle, everyone was talking about salmon. Everyone was talking about the Endangered Species Act listings that were coming down on salmon runs across the state of Washington. And I had no idea what these fish were, and why was everybody talking about the fish, and what's so important about them anyway. So one day, I went on a Sierra Club field trip to see some salmon. We did not wind up in some faraway place hours out of Seattle. We did not wind up in the wilds of the Cascades or in some national park on the Olympic Mountain Range. We wound up about half an hour or so outside of Seattle in Redmond, Washington, which at that time was still a pretty small town. Microsoft had only recently moved there, so it had not yet boomed. It was very much a small town, one of many that were then ringing Seattle. I'm standing on a footbridge in this very suburban neighborhood. I'm at Cottage Lake Creek. I'm looking down at some spawning sockeye salmon. And rather than tell you what happened next, I'm going to, if I can, just read a couple of paragraphs from that first chapter of Turning.
Yeah, go ahead, but get a little closer to your phone, Mike. I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Okay, I will.
There we go.
Turn it up a little bit. Okay, great. Thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
Okay. The sockeye had lost the sleek, silvery fitness of their ocean phase. Now in mating colors, their bodies were crimson and gleaming in the swift, clear water. The deep green of their heads appeared almost pagan. The males seemed humpbacked, their snouts descended into hooks. Sockeye pressed their bodies close to their mates, their tails quivering in rapid, intense bursts. It seemed absurd that I could hear, cutting through the suburban Sunday sounds of barking dogs and pounding hammers, the sharp, slapping noises of a female salmon lying flat against the creek bed, her crimson body arching out of the shallow water, her tail thumping in determined flaps as she carved a red and egg nest into the gravel. In the last fierce instincts of their lives, the sockeye lunged for deeper water or slashed at nearby fish. The fins of most of the sockeye were pale, and their bodies were dotted with a patchwork of white fungus, which heralded their deaths. I leaned on the footbridge railing. I stared at the sockeye. I had a strange feeling of awe and incomprehension. I was being called to witness. But what was I seeing? The Pacific Northwest, I'd heard it said many times, was anywhere there were salmon. But what were these fish to me? Years later, I would understand that what I saw that day was the creature that would guide me in turning a strange place into a home. That afternoon led to years and days and years and years and days of watching the salmon as they made that enormous journey out of the creeks where they were born, heading out to the Pacific Ocean for the next several years of their lives, and then returning to the very creeks where they were born in, finding a mate, laying their eggs, putting down that next generation, and then dying. That led to years of being a citizen scientist, of putting their eggs in local streams, of learning about stormwater runoff and its impact on salmon and Puget Sound and how rain gardens are a solution to that. One thing led to another. And the more I learned, the more questions I had, the more curious I became, the more I wanted to stay. So I think that for me, part of calling a place home is whether it sparks some new questions, whether I realize what it is that I don't know yet and need to learn.
Hang on, we're going to a quick break and we'll be right back.
Conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
Change and growth are part of natural life and also part of your spiritual life. Everyone needs support and guidance, especially during life passages. Upgrade yourself with the OMTimes Experts program. With OMTimes Experts, you have access to the best intuitive coaches, spiritual teachers, counselors, astrologists, and oracles. Our team was carefully selected so you can trust. Find out more at experts.omtimes.com.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living, a chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
Shopping for yourself or loved ones? Check out the best rock shop around, Earthlight Rocks and Gems in Kirkland, Washington. Whether you're looking for metaphysical support or just love nature's art, Earthlight has it all. Raw rocks, crystals, tumbled stones of all kinds, carvings, cabs, fossils, tumblers, rare minerals in all price ranges, and books. They also have jewelry, including custom pieces and beads to make your own. Open 7 days a week, the Earthlight store has been around since 1988 and is run by Kim and Todd Valines. Find them online at earthlightgems.com, at Etsy at earthlightgems.etsy.com, or on Facebook at Earthlight Rocks and Gems. Have a question? Email Kim at the store, earthlightgems.com. And just for OMTimes listeners, receive 10% off orders over $50 at their Etsy account with coupon code EarthlightGems. That's earthlightgems.etsy.com or the store at earthlightgems.com.
I'm Fidel Mshombo. I was born in a city called Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee and they resettle you to America, your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Practical Intuitive Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World. It's Robin Fritz. We're live in Seattle, Washington, and my very special guest today is Adrienne Ross Scanlan, and her book, Turning Homeward, Restoring Hope and Nature in the Urban Wild. So Adrienne has been giving us, a feel for her finding her way in Seattle by getting involved in what's happening right here in the city. I mean, I know a lot of people are kind of like, wow, a salmon run in the middle of the city. We kind of think that the city and nature are two separate things. And as I said at the beginning of the show, some people, depending on where they've lived, really don't have a very clear idea of the natural world around them. Maybe if they watch National Geographic or something like that on TV, but actually being out and in nature makes a huge difference to these people. I know from the visitors that I've had from the East Coast, just being in awe of what's going on around us. So Adrienne, we have so many things that we could talk about today, but, I think a lot of people don't understand probably what a lay naturalist is or a citizen scientist. So I'd like you to, tell us briefly about that. But then I'd like to talk about our question of how we create a relationship with the place we live, an ethical relationship, and the changes and the challenges that we're facing in the world. So first, tell us a little bit about the lay naturalist.
Lay naturalist, a naturalist is someone who has a broad-based understanding of nature and how nature works. Enough evolution to understand the process, enough knowledge of geology to understand the ground that you walk on, enough understanding of birds and plants and other species to be able to identify them and see how they work together and live together. A naturalist is basically a generalist. And often a naturalist is someone like myself, not someone who's gone through a university to get this knowledge. I don't have a PhD. I don't have advanced studies in biology or conservation biology or anything like that. I've read, I've walked, I've looked, I've listened, I've gotten my hands dirty, and I've learned an enormous amount about where it is that I live because I've done that. And it was through learning this that I really developed my own connection to this particular place. When you talk about how do we have a meaningful relationship with home, I believe that was one of the questions that you asked me. Mm-hmm. For me, it is, and it's going to mean different things for different people. It will. But the heart of my book and the heart of Turning Homeward is this journey to figure out not just where I was, but how I was supposed to be living here. I'm Jewish, and so flowing through my life and flowing through Turning Homeward is the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, of repairing the world. It's a very old concept. It means different things at different times. It has changed. It has evolved as an idea. So does nature change. So does human beings. To me, learning about a place, connecting with a place, as you're learning about what's beautiful in this place, as you're learning about all the bird species and the salmon species, you're also inevitably going to be confronted with having to learn about what's harming them. It's wonderful to be able to go to Seattle, to a Seattle stream or a stream elsewhere in Puget Sound, even one that's flowing through a city, and see coho salmon and sockeye salmon and other chum salmon, other salmon species coming back to spawn. That's fabulous. But if they're coho, and those streams are flowing, and they're in streams that are flowing through an urban area, there's going to be a lot of stormwater pouring off of our city streets and pouring into those creeks and streams that are going to poison the coho and kill them before they have a chance to spawn. This kind of knowledge is inevitable. So it's part of being connected with home and having a meaningful relationship with home is not being overwhelmed and frightened and fearful with what we're seeing, but it's also finding solutions. I'm not trying to minimize the environmental dangers that we're facing. I mean, we can kick them off. Climate change, species extinctions, toxins, you name it. I mean, there's no end to it. And we've lost a great deal, and those losses are important. But it's also important to understand that just as there's no end to the kind of damage we've caused to the world, there's also no end to our very human curiosity, our capacity for good work, our intelligence, our stubbornness, our willingness to fall in love with the world and just hang on tight to it. And that is something that I saw time and time again at tree plantings, at salmon restoration projects, even at community meetings and committee meetings, people who were willing to hold on tight to what they loved and to continue to fight for it.
Yes, that's a huge thing. Go ahead.
Connecting with the home around us, it's as simple as planting a tree. I did that just the other day with my now 10-year-old daughter. And sometimes it's a matter of caring for the forest. So it can mean, and because trees can be so long-lived, the tree that you put in now means caring for it, caring for its ecosystem for decades and decades and decades to come. I think it was Teddy Roosevelt who said, do what you can where you are with what you've got. And I feel that's a good place to start anywhere. And it also certainly sums up for me what it is that I've learned from connecting with a place that I now call home.
So say that again, what Teddy Roosevelt said.
What he said was, do what you can where you are with what you've got. I'm going to say it again. Do what you can where you are with what you've got.
Exactly.
And I interpret that to mean, don't be perfect. Don't hope to be perfect. Don't expect to be perfect. Start someplace and learn as you go. Learn from your mistakes and learn from your engage. Get better at it and keep going. Keep being stubborn. When I go down to Longfellow Creek and I see that garbage has been hauled out and graffiti has been painted over and someone has put in snowberries and vine maples and someone has put in sword fern into the ground cover, and there's now basically a stream that was torn away from concrete and recreated with a real riparian zone with trees around it, with kind of like step ladders built into the stream so the salmon can jump up, rest, jump,
right.
rest. Spawning ground. This took a lot of stubbornness, and I have enormous gratitude for the people who were that stubborn.
And we do have a pretty active community here out and about, digging up so-called weeds and trying to restore native habitat in our urban area. I know my deck on my condo, it's like 3 feet wide by 10 feet long, is a certified wildlife habitat. The little things that we try to do here in our neighborhood to, support nature. Of course, we have bald eagles and all of that around here, so we are constantly blessed by being in nature. But again, there are people like my friend who were like, oh my gosh, if everything were this beautiful, we'd care enough to take care of it. But we can all take care of the nature around us. We can all just appreciate it. I try to get people, when I do animal communication, to just go for a walk with their dogs and look at the insides of flowers. The dogs are sniffing them. Just lean over and take a look at what they're looking at. And really, just appreciate what's going on around you. So what are things, people are listening. They're not going to go out and be able to work on a salmon run in their hometown, or some of the things that you could do in a place like Seattle. So what can we do? What can people look at doing? Like, we have the certified wildlife habitat thing here. I don't know if they have that in other states. It's just a way of providing food and water in the native plants for bugs and birds. Bees and so on. But what about the ring gardens? What about other things that people could do? I mean, this is an audience here, the mind, body, spirit people. They're like, okay, what can I do in the middle of a big city? What can I do in Louisiana? What can I do in Southern California? What can they do?
I think what you can do is just about endless. There really is an enormous untapped potential for suburban and city areas to support wildlife and to promote making nature that much stronger, to cleaning up our world. And the list really is endless. I mean, I've read of people putting in pollinator pathways in city areas or residential
putting in what again?
Pollinator pathways. So, those green strips of grass that you have between the street and your house?
Right.
Get rid of the grass. Work with your neighbors, put in native plants, and suddenly you've got a foraging range for bees. You can have bees going throughout your neighborhood, and where there are bees, you've got pollinators, and when you've got pollinators, you have flowers. I've read of buses in New York City. They have these double-decker buses, and people are starting to put basically gardens on top of the buses.
Oh, that's cool.
I see that in Seattle as well. Cities are really
pea patches.
This place where more and more species are going. It used to be believed that in cities, the only birds that you'd ever see were crows and starlings and seagulls and that kind of stuff. But there is actually a massive global study of birds in 54 cities and across about 154 cities. And what they found was that cities, about 20% of the world's bird species live in cities. And many times these birds are native to their region, and some of them are endangered species. So the cities and the habitats they provide, parks, golf courses that have native flora on them, school campuses, hospital campuses, these are important habitat areas too. I think that we need to get rid of this notion that there's nature and there's us and there's the city and there's the wild. Nature keeps flowing in. It comes in whether we want it to or not.
Yes, I'm sorry to make a joke out of this, but my dog and I were coming home at about 9 o'clock from last walk a couple weeks ago, and there were two raccoons going at it in front of our door, and I'm standing outside going like, I can't get inside because nature has come calling. So there is a little bit of that, but I live in a pretty wild area, but just on a general basis, people could try the certified wildlife habitat in their areas. They could just plant.
I mean, the nations, when the Audubon Society polls bird watchers and birders, and they say, what's your favorite place for looking for birds? Almost inevitably, the answer is my backyard.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, if you put in the right flora and fauna, a lot of people can have a fabulous time pulling birds right literally into their backyard, into their neighborhood, and you can watch them living out their lives. I remember once I was taking my daughter Ariel, home from a shop, the grocery store. She was still in her stroller. We're going down the street, and all of a sudden, I just out of the corner of my eye, I glance over, and this chickadee is just roaring past me. And in hot pursuit was an exhibitor hawk, was a sharpshin.
Oh, my goodness.
And the feathers literally do fly, Robin. They really do.
Yeah.
And this chickadee got into a small tree that had a lot of twigs and branches, and it kind of formed a little barrier. And the Sharpie could not get to it. And that was one angry hawk, let me tell you. No, but nature is right. It is right here in all kinds of places. And really, as we destroy more natural areas, as we must destroy more of those areas, and cities flow into what was once rural or what was once wild, these species are coming in beside us. Coyotes are an example of that. There have been some.
Oh, they never left.
They never left, but there have been some phenomenal animal studies done on coyotes in New York City, and coyotes have become so adept at the urban environment that they are teaching their young how to interpret traffic lights so that the young can cross safely.
That totally makes sense.
Completely makes sense. I mean, if you open up, if you take an area and just take it from wild into urban, something is going to come in and fill that place. Something will find a niche. You are always as close to nature as your front door.
It's true, and people need to, just pay attention when you're out and about, wherever you are, whatever city you're in, what you're looking at, what's looking back at you. I can look up my deck, and I'll see a dozen hummingbirds sitting in the tree next door at the neighbor's place, and people walking by, not one of them will notice. And, just like open your eyes and look around and just marvel at it. We're very lucky here. I know, Adrienne, you have to go. Thank you for joining us. Let's tell people again, Turning Homeward, Restoring Hope in Nature in the Urban Wild, Adrienne Ross Scanlan. You can find it on Amazon. It's an amazing book. I'm so pleased for you. Adrienne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Take care, Robin.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Today we decided to walk to school. The light counted 15, 14,
13.
We took a left on Carroll Street. Danny's smart, but he gets distracted. He realized he forgot his homework. I hope he doesn't have another bad day at school.
When you can see learning and attention issues from their side, you can be on their side. That's why there's understood.org, a free resource for the parents of the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues. Go from misunderstanding to understood.org. Brought to you by Understood and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Practical Intuitive Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World. It's Robin Fritz. We're live in Seattle, Washington. And I'm sorry to say we had to cut our discussion with Adrienne Ross Scanlan a little short because I know school was getting out and she had a time frame there. But Adrienne covers, we only just touched on the number of things that she can talk about in terms of living in nature, living with nature, and living in harmony with nature. And as a metaphysical community, focused on mind, body, and spirit, maybe we don't think about nature enough and what that means to us. Now, I have to be near the ocean. I lived 10 years in Michigan, and it just was not a place that I wanted to be. It's a great state, great people. I made lifelong friends there, but I need to be by the ocean. And so for me, living in this city has been a tremendous thing. And I am grateful every day that I can look out my front window and see the ocean. Puget Sound, one of the largest shipping areas in the country, but also a very wild environment. And you stop to think about it when you live here on the West Coast in a place like Seattle. What does nature mean to you, and what can we do about it? I've lived here 30 years at least. And in that time period, we've seen a huge resurgence in the bald eagle population. When I was a kid, we were pretty much thinking that the contamination that had gotten into the eagle population and softened the eggs so the eggs wouldn't hatch, that contamination would kill off this bird, which is, the national symbol of the United States, the bald eagle. And yet we see them here all the time now where I live. We see them off and on in Seattle, not just here in West Seattle, but north. I saw one just flying over downtown on a regular basis. And I think what Adrienne had to say about, where are we going in nature, and how is it relating to us, and how are we relating to it? You've got people out there like her that are literally redrawing the landscape. They're not just pulling garbage out of places. They're not just doing that. They're restoring habitat, and what does that mean? We didn't even get into the conversation of what is a weed and what is a native plant, because that becomes part of a conversation too. If the people who were here before us, the people who settled Seattle and all of these areas, and really the whole country and the countries before that, brought Himalayan blackberries, and they've taken over, and they're wild, and people call them an invasive species, but a lot of people like to, eat the fruit too. I mean, that's what they brought them here for. What is our responsibility as citizens of the planet, just living here, as well as how do we live in nature in the city? I regularly see bald eagles chased by gulls and crows. I hate the eagles. And I see the eagles chase the osprey and try to get the osprey to drop their catch. The osprey are fishing birds, so they're routinely diving from great heights into the ocean and occasionally coming up with lunch. But how do we relate to that as people, and how does that affect us on a spiritual and soul level? And those are questions, we each have to ask ourselves. Some people are happy living in the concrete city. I know people that love New York, and the last time I was there was actually much better for me. Beautiful, but I couldn't even live in downtown Seattle. That's just me. The question for us, though, is what can we do to live in harmony with nature? And that's something that humanity as a whole hasn't done, really, in a long time. I mean, we used to have to fight nature to survive, right? We're talking about making sure that we can make it through a drought. When a crop fails, what are we going to eat? These are the things that have destroyed civilizations throughout history, and we see a regular record of that. What happened to some of these ancient civilizations like the Mayans or the Polynesians, even the people who settled Greenland and Iceland, and took over from what was already there. What were we doing? Were we living in harmony with that land, or were we just overwhelming the resources? And it's not just humans, animals will do it as well, just eat a place into the ground, so to speak. But where do we create a balance? And how do we create that balance? And what does that mean to us? And I made a joke about my deck being a native wildlife habitat. But it's a very simple thing to do. Put in some native plants in pots and, put a little way for them to get water out there. And, you'll see a bird or two show up on your deck and visit. And if that makes you feel a little bit more connected to the land around you, isn't that an awesome thing? And are we less lonely as people, as citizens of the planet, when we can look at nature around us and feel connected to it as opposed to plowing it under? Now, I know that we need to grow. We need cities to survive. We are a very complicated species. We need an awful lot. Now, I personally need electricity and grocery stores and my house cat. These are things that I can't do without, which I don't know, we're kind of a citizen of the planet. That makes me. But we all have things that we need and we want in our daily lives. The question is, how much are we taking away and how much are we giving back? And someone like Adrienne is giving a ton back by going out and trying to restore some balance to the world in a way that a human can do that in. And that's a pretty amazing thing. But there are things that we can all do, not just, put a few plants on your deck or walk respectfully when you're out there, but I think it's the Japanese now that are talking about foresting, or the concept of going out into a forest and literally breathing the air and being part of that forest for a period of time. I hope that all of you that are listening to this today and that are thinking about nature can have the opportunity, if nothing else, than to go to a park and sit under a tree somewhere in the town that you live in and really try to feel what it would be like to be part of a natural environment that includes trees, that includes, the ground below us. I know that I tried so hard up and down the block here to get everyone to replace the parking strip grass with this. I should have looked it up, but I can't remember what we used to call it, what they call it. I did this years ago. But to replace it with this, Adrienne actually mentioned it. It's kind of a grass clover mixture of things. It doesn't look like grass. It kind of looks, to some people, it looks like weeds. But they're little flowers or little clovers in it. And once the first couple of years go by and you kind of treat it like regular grass, like you mow it once or twice, it takes over and takes care of itself. And if you stop to think about it, the one thing that we could all do in making the world a better place is to get rid of grass. I mean, literally grass. It is a huge environmental disaster. It's a huge source of allergens for people and animals. and the fertilizers and everything that you go about to grow grass, it's just not a natural thing. I think about grass the same way I think about geraniums. Who the heck came up with this stuff? But if you could replace it with something that took care of itself, and invited things back into the planet and into balance, if we could look at nature as something as with us, as instead of apart from us, would we be better off? I think we would be. I think we would be able to feel better about our lives, about our place in the world, because we would be less disconnected. And I think a lot of what's happening right now in the world, and then let's just take away politics and your various views on things like gun control and all of the things that the American people are facing now, but really everyone worldwide. Crowded, more and more people everywhere. What are we going to do? Build up the cities or what? But the real basic thing is, how do we live in harmony with nature? And what does that mean? And how can we really boost ourselves, mind, body, and spirit with this connection? For those of you who are acquainted with me on Facebook, you know that my dog and I were involved in a major incident last week where I was attacked by a Great Dane who was loose and was trying to get to my dog. And what we're seeing here are loose dogs. Okay, but beyond that possibility is just going out and being, going for a walk and just being outside and appreciating nature and being outside and appreciating whatever's happening that day. And over 20 years of being out and about with dogs on a regular basis, I have seen the most amazing things at night. The various phases of the moon, the just rain, snow, heat, whatever it is, it's just being out there. So I invite all of you to get out into nature, go for a walk in your neighborhood, take a deep breath, and just let mind, body, and spirit connect. How can you just relax and be in nature? How can you let the natural world around you boost you up, mind, body, and spirit, help you be your best day and night? And I think a big problem that we all have is this disconnect from the world around us. It's not supposed to be that way. Yeah, we all want to live inside. We sure do. We sure want all of those advantages of nature. But go for a walk. I challenge you to go for a walk. Turn off your cell phones, take those earbuds out, and just pay attention to what's going on around you. The world around you is a fascinating place. It is just amazing. I know when I go out and walk on the beach, low tide, it's a different world. It's alien universe right outside my front door. But it's a place for us too to ask the big questions of what do we give back to the world? What do we offer to the world? How do we as humans live as equals with all life? This is the mindset that I teach, the mindset that I was taught when I work with volcanoes, when I work with weather systems, when I work with trees, when I work with the beings that live here and supervise the greenery, which they, have their own names for themselves. It's learning respect for ourselves and for the world around us, and being equals with all life gives us both opportunity and responsibility to do the best we can for everyone and everything as equals. So I hope that gives you some food for thought today. Coming up in the next month, we are going to be talking about a whole range of things. Crystals, for one. We're thinking about crystals for spring. And oh my gosh, all kinds of things coming up here. What happens in the afterlife? That's going to be a fun topic. What's going on in the world? All kinds of things coming up here in the future. If you go to the experts platform at experts.com, experts.omtimes.com/Robin Fritz, I have a 5-part webinar series coming up on managing our energy boundaries. And getting out in nature is one of the ways that we manage our energy boundaries. We have a physical body, we have an energy body, and we need those two to work in harmony. And so You want to learn how to use your intuition. You want to really develop your intuitive and healing skills. That's how you do it. You become a person who can understand what's happening on the physical level, what's happening on the mind, body, spirit level, and really making a difference for yourself in the world of being the healthy, strong, best person that you can be, so that you can have fun in your personal and your work life, so you can really earn that living, that you can go and be comfortable and really just be part of the world. That's what we're here for, right? Growing our souls. So that Energy Boundaries series starts March 20th. If you have questions, email me at robin@robinfritz.com. Next week, we're talking about energy boundaries on my show. And after that, When Getting Angry is Sacred Work, right? That's coming up on Monday, March 12th. When we get mad, get something done. And jobs to do when you're dead. Guess what? We don't stop working when we're dead. All kinds of fascinating things happen in the afterlife. So we'll be covering those on the show and in webinars. But for today, I want to thank you for joining us. If you have questions that you'd like us to cover here on the show, or if you have intuitive readings you'd like, just email me at robin@robinfritz.com. But in the beginning of the show, we opened with this meditation with Fallon. I'd like to close down now. Cross your hands on your heart. And just breathe into the palms of your hands. And you can practice during the week putting your hands on yourself and letting that energy heal you. But as you breathe into the palms of your hands, then hold your hands out to the world and let that energy go where it will. We'll be talking about what energy is coming up. And then cross your hands on your heart, breathe into those palms. Hold your hands in front of your face so that you can feel the breath on your palms, and then put your hands back on your heart, grounding you back into your body to go about the rest of your day. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.